is a software engineer at General Motors. He's also the Emir of Bidayat Ittihad, which is the Maghreb group of Detroit and Windsor. And with that, I'd like to introduce Omar Malik.
Supposed to put these on?
Yeah, those are mine.
Oh yeah? Alright. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Jazakallah khair everyone, and I deeply apologize for my delay. May Allah bless you guys for being patient with me. I was trying to get here in time, but things kept coming up. So we're here, alhamdulillah, now, and it's a beautiful gathering. The angels are here making dua for us, asking for mercy for us, and as you have taken the path to knowledge, as the Prophet tells us, anyone who treads the path toward knowledge, Allah will make the path of Jannah easy for them. May Allah make us of those who enter Jannah. Ameen. So I just wanted to kind of mention how this is going to be structured. First of all, my name is Omar Malik, as the brother introduced. Actually, Amir of Kabila Ittihad, Michigan. Windsor has its own Amir and their own student body. So I am actually really excited to have a class coming up end of November by Sheikh Abdul Nazir Jangda about the deep down analysis of Surah Maryam. So I thought it would be really nice to actually give you kind of like a little, I guess what's the word? Insight and promo, because I'm literally going to be able to only cover one verse, just the word by word analysis to give you a feel for how powerful the surah is. Now imagine spending a whole weekend discussing the surah, and I think that's something really missing in our times today, is the 9 to 5 type of people like who are busy with the just day-to-day activities, school and work. We don't really get a lot of time to spend with the Quran at the level that it deserves. So these kind of courses really help you with that. So I'm going to go through a couple of verses just to show you the powerful aspect of the Quran when it comes to its linguistic miracle. We'll talk about the relevancy of Surah Maryam in our times today, especially living in a Christian land and knowing, and this is one of the surahs that was used by one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, anyone knows his name, who used this as a way to connect with his Christian audience. Who would that companion be? His name starts with a J. Yeah, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, who was the brother of Ali radiallahu anhu. So Ja'far had a very interesting event that happened, and I wanted to start off the night today with that discussion. This is something that I used recently at a major church in Ann Arbor, and it's something that I use always as a way to start to connect with the Christian, especially majority audience. So this will be, now one of the things I want to make sure that you realize is Surah Maryam is not just about Maryam. Does anyone know anyone else mentioned in this surah? In Surah Maryam? Yeah.
Prophet Zakaria?
Yeah, Zakaria, Prophet Zakaria. Any other ones?
Yahya.
Prophet Yahya. Okay. Think of other personalities. Isa alayhi salam, yeah. Huh? Ibrahim alayhi salam. In fact, the whole middle portion of this surah is dedicated to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So a lot of people don't realize this surah is way more than just dialogue with the Christians, and it's way more than just Maryam alayhi salam. It's something connected right after Surah Al-Kahf, right? So Surah Al-Kahf and this Surah Maryam coming right after is not coincidental, because even the way Quran is organized has a divine aspect to it. So there is a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, in a verse in Surah Kahf 109, says, قُلْ كَانَ الْبَحْرُ مِدَادًا لِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّي. Right, so he used the word kalimat, which means a sign, and then he uses the same word to describe Isa alayhi salam in the same surah. Right, so there's some really powerful linguistic connections happening, and that's what makes Quran so valuable, rather than just looking at the English translation of it. But we're going to try to mix it up, inshallah, with the limited time that we have. Now the layout of the surah, first of all, it starts off first 15 verses about Zakaria alayhi salam, and there's a big reason for that as well. Keep in mind that the Quran was not just revealed to the Prophet ﷺ like the 10 tablets or the 10 commandments or the tablets revealed to Musa ﷺ, but this was revealed over the period of 23 years. And anything that Prophet ﷺ needed, where he needed a boost in his life, through the Quran would be revealed accordingly to his situation. So anyone can take a guess on when this was revealed, And I've already given you a hint that Ja'far radiallahu anhu used this as a dawah. So think about when he would have said it, and then think about, kind of try to guess when the surah was revealed. And you can come up with a pretty good conclusion. So when was it that Ja'far radiallahu anhu recited these ayat from Surah Maryam?
They went to see Najashi.
Yeah, they went to see Najashi. Which year did that happen? In the time of the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ? That was the 5th year after the Prophet ﷺ became the Prophet of Allah, right? So would Surah Maryam have been revealed after they moved, or do you think it was already revealed? It had to be already revealed, because how would Ja'far know what to say? Right? So they were already accustomed to this surah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew exactly what's going to happen next year, and so He had already equipped the Muslims with these ayat so that a historical event took place, and Ja'far radiallahu anhu, literally, because of the verses of Surah Maryam, was able to protect the whole Muslim community who otherwise would have been deported back to Makkah. And we are worried about deportation today, right? Like Muslims worried about getting deported back home. Imagine a whole Muslim community ready to be deported back to their back home country, Makkah, and all of the odds were against them, but Surah Maryam saved the day. And Ja'far radiallahu anhu used these verses. So first of all, also keep in mind in the 4th year, the people who did not have a good tribal backing, like Bilal radiallahu anhu, Khabbab ibn Arat, and other Sahaba, they were being persecuted. But the Prophet ﷺ was not physically persecuted yet, right? Because he had a tribal backing. That started happening later. But already the companions of the Prophet ﷺ were coming up to the Prophet ﷺ, like Khabbab bin Araf. He was the man who they would put coal under his back until the blood and the meat that would get burned would come and soak away the heat of the coals. And later, Umar radiallahu anhu had asked him to show his back to the companions, and it had like huge gash and holes in it. He said that I've never seen something like this in my life. So this man comes to the Prophet ﷺ in the 4th year of the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine what, if you feel sometimes that Muslims are alone and we're being attacked, imagine what they're going through at this time, physical torture. And Khabbab ibn Arat came up to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, when would the help of Allah come? And the Prophet ﷺ was leaning by the Kaaba, and his face usually wouldn't turn, he wouldn't get angry, but when he would, you could tell by his facial features. So his face became red, and he got up, and he said that people before you, they would be, people would bring chains and take the flesh off of their skins, and they would sew them in half, but these people would never give up on the kalima, la ilaha illallah, and the tawheed, and the same message of Islam that has been going on since Adam al-Islam to Ibrahim till the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even though Khabbab bin Arat had a very good reason to complain, this is a man who's being severely tortured, but the Prophet ﷺ was not happy, and he said, you guys are not patient. Stay strong. And then he allowed for them to migrate to Eastern Africa, Abyssinia, and that's when the migration happened in the 5th year of prophethood. So Ja'far radiallahu anhu was among the people, and there are 2 opinions about how many people went. So there was either 11 people, 8 men and 3 women, or 14 people, 11 men and 3 women. At the end of the day, it was a small group of people running away from persecution to find asylum in a Christian land. So the reason I find this really interesting is when you go to a church, what better, or a Christian or a Jewish neighbor or classmate, what better incident than talk about this, that the Prophet ﷺ found good reason for Muslims to go to a Christian land to find security there, because it wasn't about religion, it was about justice. And that's the thing about Islam. Islam always promotes justice. So it's not about being a Muhammadan religion, it's about promoting justice. It's not about Arab or non-Arab. So Islam's universal message from day one has been to, as all the Prophet said, is to not base anything on race, but to worry about justice. And even when you go for wars, Islam is not a passive religion. It doesn't say there's no wars. But when you go for war, it is very clear as to what exactly is your intention behind that. And that's why the hadith of the Prophet where two Muslims were fighting each other, and they basically wanted to kill each other, and one of them was able to kill the other. The Prophet said, both of them will be in the hellfire. And the companions asked, "O Prophet of Allah, it makes sense the one who died would be in the one who killed will be in the hellfire, but what about the one who died?" What was the response of the Prophet ﷺ? Why would both of them end up in the hellfire?
Their intention?
Because their intention was to kill each other. It just happened that one of them overpowered the other, right? So the intention was still to fight and kill each other for the wrong reasons, right? So promoting justice, and if there is a justice, as the scholars tell us that if a land has justice in it, even if it's not a land of Muslims, it will prevail over a land that is completely full of Muslims where there is no justice, right? So to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, justice makes a big deal, and that's what we promote, is to fight against oppression. And that's exactly what Jabir radiallahu anhu showed through his speech in Islam. So I wanted to start off the night today with this conversation because I think it's very beneficial, and I think it will resonate with us because we also go through these same attacks. And imagine you have a Amr bin al-As radiallahu anhu, we call him radiallahu anhu now, but at that time he was one of the fierce enemies of the Prophet ﷺ. He also came along, right? It's not like Muslims went, have a peaceful time and we're not going to bother you. No, they brought their whole gang after them because they were worried that when Jafar speaks that they're going to get exposed for the persecution against Muslims. So they wanted to be there to make their say overpower the say of the Muslims. How did they do that? What did they do? What techniques did they use to make sure that they have a better say over Muslims, which we see a lot of times even today? What was something that Amr ibn al-As did at that time to sway the opinion towards them away from the Muslims? They already had they were already thinking ahead of the game. Can you think of if you were to go to someone and if you didn't have the right intention, how would you try to impress a person of this worldly?
Oh, they get gifts.
Yeah, they brought gifts. In fact, like the best of carpets and things that the Najashi loved the most. So they knew what he likes, and they brought those particular gifts to try to sway away and have a upper hand right from the beginning of the conversation. But Prophet ﷺ, look at his vision, right? He had sent them to a land where he knew that no matter how bad the Muslims look, but the Najashi would not excuse them unless he hears them first. So that's what happened, and Jafar radiallahu anhu spoke the following words. He said, "O king, we were people in a state of ignorance and immorality." And also, everything I mentioned right now in the speech, please think about these as our context today, and are these things happening today as well or not? Because Quran's message is forever, right? It's applicable till the till the end of time. So you have to think about these words and think about how relevant that is even today. So the people were in a state of ignorance and immorality. We see that all around us. They were worshipping idols and eating the flesh of dead animals, and that happens as well. They were committing all sorts of abomination and shameful deeds. They were breaking the ties of kinship. Look at every next person getting divorced, right? Even it's inflicting the Muslim community, and the relationship between parents and children is being severely affected, right? The concept of elders, respect, that kind of stuff. So breaking the ties of kinship, treating guests badly. The strong among us exploited the weak. We remained in this state until Allah sent us a prophet out of our own people, whose lineage, truthfulness, trustworthiness, and integrity were well known to us. He called us to worship Allah alone and to renounce the stones and the idols which we and our ancestors used to worship besides Allah. He commanded us to speak the truth. He commanded us to honor our promises, to be kind to our relations, to be helpful to our neighbors, to cease all forbidden acts, to abstain from bloodshed, to avoid obscenities and false witnesses, and to not appropriate an orphan's property, nor slander chaste women. Think about everything that they attack Islam with. Prophet ﷺ was saying the exact opposite. He specifically mentioned women, where today our women are portrayed as oppressed. He specifically mentioned the orphans, not just anyone, and the orphans are the most neglected people in our societies. He specifically mentions trustworthiness, truthfulness, and don't just go killing people for no reason, and abstain from bloodshed. It's the most hated thing to have bloodshed in Islam, and these are the teachings of Islam, clearly laid out in few beautiful words by Jabir radiallahu anhu. Anyone who hears that would not disagree with this message. Who would disagree with anything that was said so far? So of course the Najashi is listening, paying attention, and I'm not going to go through the rest because we want to go back to Surah Maryam, but you know what happened, right? Najashi was impressed. Who wouldn't be, right? Islam is nothing to hide. Islam is a religion that makes sense, it's logical. Even the faith part of it, we're supposed to ponder. Quran says over and over, أَفَلَا يَتَذَكَّرُونَ, fikr, the word fikr, and to contemplate over and over is mentioned, to contemplate over your existence, what do you believe in, and to have a logical understanding of your faith. So they basically depart, and Amr ibn al-As could see that this is not going the right way for them. So he goes to the Najashi and he mentions that you should see what these people are saying about Isa alayhi salam. Right? So he wanted to, and we have nothing to hide. We don't believe in Isa as a son of God, but we believe him as a prophet of Allah, saying the exact same thing as all of the prophets before, especially Prophet Abraham. Because this is the exact reason why Allah mentioned Ibrahim alayhi salam in the surah, because this is something that even the disbelievers or the polytheists, so right, we have the people of the book, Jews and Christians, and then we have those who do not believe in these faiths, but even they have an association with Ibrahim alayhi salam. Even Hindus, if you look at their teachings, there is mention of Ibrahim alayhi salam in their teachings. So Ibrahim is a central figure. That's why Allah put him in Surah Maryam to connect us back. That what was the central message? What was all the prophets trying to say? And that was the message of Tawheed, oneness of God and worshiping Him alone without any partners. So they basically come back, and this is a moment of truth, right? You're in a situation. You're not gonna just change the message of Islam. You have to speak the truth. You know, Ja'far radiallahu anhu is not going to basically change the message of Islam just to please the king. So he recited Surah Maryam and the beautiful verses of Surah Maryam about Isa alayhi salam, and the Najashi was in tears, and then he took a piece of straw on the floor and he said that the difference between what you say about Isa and what we know about Isa is no more than this straw in my hand. Basically what you're saying, it follows exactly what we believe in, right? And eventually he actually accepted Islam because he was so impressed, and he said to Amr ibn al-As, go back, for I would never give them up to you, and take your gifts with you. You know, that was the power of justice. So this is, like I said, a life, imagine the Muslims at this point, what it would have been, what history would have been like had Ja'far not been able to convince by reciting the verses of Surah Maryam. So keeping that in mind, inshallah, it's a beautiful surah. A couple of lessons from this particular incident: never compromise on the Sharia and its rules. Do not be apologetic, right? When Sharia makes sense, people just don't know about it. It's the ignorance of it, and they don't understand the deeper understanding of it. So never compromise on that. Never twist the message of Islam, because when you do that, you're actually going to receive no respect from the other people, because then they're going to get conflicting messages. So we all should be saying the exact same thing, because Islam is clear-cut. You should understand your audience. We learn about that. So, you know, this would not be a time to be talking about Surah Baqarah, right? And rules and regulations. This was a time to talk about Surah Maryam, because he knew his audience. And accounting the rulers. So making sure that, you know, if you ever get leadership, make sure that you do it with justice. And we all have going to get a chance, whether it be an MSA president, whether it be a father, or other community leaders. Make sure that you do your part as a just leader. So a couple of verses, let's take a few lessons. So I wanted to start off with the first verse of this beautiful surah. What is the first verse? Yeah, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad. Right? What does that mean? And that's exactly the point. Is at the time when the Quran was being revealed, the poetry and the Arabic language and eloquence, what it was at its epic levels, right? Like the top level poetry, and this was something that the Arabs took a lot of pride in. So what these words do to you is actually they're an attention grabber. So imagine if I'm just speaking and all of a sudden I say A, B, C, you're like, what's wrong with this guy, right? I see the smiles, right? So it catches your attention, and that's what the Quran would do with these are called huruf al-muqatta'at, that it would catch their attention. And it was also a challenge to the Arabs that these are the same letters that you're so used to, and you take pride in these letters and developing your sophisticated poetry, but you can't even explain 5 letters, right, of the Quran. So this was a way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenging the Arabs as well, to show that the Quran is something special. That doesn't matter how eloquent you get, that this was always going to overcome your poeticness, because this is divine. It's not a human word. And another thing that huruf muqatta'at do is it always tells us about the Quran right after. So if you look at through all of the surahs, this is something so interesting. Alif Lam Mim, what comes after? ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, right? What kitab, what is the book is talking about? The Quran. So go through the whole Quran. Anytime you see huruf muqatta'at, look at the perfect symmetrical aspect of the Quran. Right after, you will see a mention of the Quran itself. Either the word Quran itself will be mentioned, or kitab, or some reference to the Quran. Same with this surah. So it says, كاف ها يا عين صاد ذكر ربي what's the next ayah? SubhanAllah. ذكر رحمة ربك عبدا زكريا. Right? So dhikr, what is the dhikr? What dhikr is it talking about here? It's the Quran, the remembrance, and that's actually referring to the Quran. So the first verse, like I said, Kaf Ha Ya Insan. But before I do that, I forgot to mention the structure and the layout of the surah. So what are the first 15 verses, if you remember? What is that going to talk about? Zakaria alayhi salam. After that, the next 10 ayat will go into absolving Maryam alayhi salam of the onslaught of people and the false accusations against her. And it will show you the character and one of the greatest role models for men and women, Maryam alayhi salam. You know, the Prophet ﷺ put her even above his own mother when it comes to status of Maryam alayhi salam, right? And there's only 4 women that he mentioned as the best woman, and he mentioned Maryam alayhi salam as the top figure. So what a role model for us to follow, right? And today, one of the great ways for the sisters who wear hijab is we are emulating Maryam alayhi salam. We want to dress up like her, because even in the other faith, they have her dressing exactly how you guys dress. So what a way to connect, right? Instead of just going into the philosophical stuff, even just following her lesson, we're the closest to following the Maryam alayhi salam and her appearance and her teachings than any other faith. Because you physically embody the way Maryam alayhi salam looks. Even the people who revere her so much don't dress up like her. But for us, we love her so much that you try to follow and revere this woman. And that should be something of pride for us as Muslims, that we love Maryam alayhi salam, and we're not just saying it, we're showing it in our actions. So this is a great way for da'wah to connect it back to Maryam alayhi salam. So that's the next 10 verses about Maryam. After that, the ayah reprimands those who took Isa as someone divine. Now what's amazing again here is this surah, one of the key highlights of this surah is the relationship of children and parents. So can you think of some parent-children relationships going on in the surah with just the people that you mentioned?
Yahya and Zakaria.
Yeah, Yahya and Zakaria alayhi salam, right? Who else?
Ibrahim, Ismail.
Ibrahim, Ismail. Who else? How about the father of Ibrahim and Ibrahim? That's also mentioned here. How the father of Ibrahim alayhi salam and how Ibrahim alayhi salam was being rejected by his own father, and his father was not someone like sometimes we get sad because our parents are not praying. Well, his father was worshipping idols, and not even that, he was like the factory producer. He was the one who was producing the idols, right? But how did Ibrahim alayhi salam deal with his father? That's in this surah. So you see another father relationship. What other father and parent relationship? Parent and son.
Kind of. Zakaria and Maryam.
Zakaria and Maryam, kinda, yeah, he was the caretaker,
And
right? What about Maryam and Isa? Right?
thought that was a given.
Huh?
Thought that was a given.
Yeah, so subhanAllah, you see how that's happening over and over? So what Allah shows throughout this surah is the dependence of human beings on children, because the best way for us to relay whatever we learned about Islam is to carry it through who? Who's going to carry our message forward? What's the best way for us to? It's our own children. And that's why Zakaria alayhi salam, when he was asking for a son, he was asking more for the afterlife of his own, because he wanted someone to carry on the message of Islam. And that's the way we should look at our kids. What is our top priority goal as kids? So if you want to learn something from Zakaria alayhi salam, focus not only on the education, but also on the hereafter, because the dua of your child will benefit you in your grave. So these were visionaries. Whenever you go for success in this life, and you downgrade the focus on the hereafter, you're gonna lose both. But if you focus on the hereafter, you're gonna get both, right? So Zakaria alayhi salam and his son. Now, knowing all of these, this connection between parents and children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly towards the end of the surah and also in the beginning, it clearly rejects the fact that all of us human beings, our biggest desire is to have someone to carry our name, and we desire children, but Allah completely dissociates himself from children. And just before Surah Maryam started, what was the surah that ends just before Maryam? Surah Kahf. And what's the last verse of Surah Kahf talking about? It's denying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has any type of kids or have children, right? And then right after that, Surah Maryam starts, and then this surah would also end with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejecting him depending on any children, right? This is clear cut, and that's why Surah Maryam is a proof of that, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, rejecting that notion that he would ever need son, because that's a human thing. Human tends to need the next progeny, but Allah is independent. He doesn't need another someone to carry his message forward, because he is ever living and he doesn't need children. And that's clearly mentioned in Qul Huwallahu Ahad, the smallest surah, one of the smallest surahs in the Quran. Now, after talking about that, what is another thing that people deny, right? So this is Tawheed. Now, what other things? We know that a lot of prophets are going to be mentioned, which has to do with the Risala, the messengerhood, and the message of Islam. In Islam, you really have the message itself. You have, which includes the messengers, the angels, and the prophets of Allah. And then you have Allah Himself, the belief in Allah. And what is another really important aspect in Islam? So you got the message taken care of. You got the Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, the belief in Allah. What is another really critical aspect? The Day of Judgment, right? And so Surah Maryam covers that in the next portion. After Zakariya's story, after Maryam alayhi salam, after reprimanding those who take Jesus as the son of God, the next one is to talk about the Day of Judgment. Because that's another thing. A lot of people actually, you might not realize it, but they deny the Day of Judgment. They might even, a lot of people say, we believe in God, but they will reject the Day of Judgment. So Allah mentions that. The next ayah talks about other prophets briefly, and a lot of them are mentioned actually, not just Isa and Maryam. Actually, Maryam is not a messenger of Allah, but you know what I mean. Isa, Ibrahim, Ismail, Yaqub, these are all mentioned briefly. After that, there is an encouragement for Prophet ﷺ to be patient. Keep in mind, this is the 4th year of Prophet ﷺ, and Allah is giving him Surah Maryam as a way of confidence for him, and for him to know that Allah has his back. That if Allah could take care of Zakaria when all odds were against him, then the Prophet ﷺ would also be taken care of. Since we're on that topic, that's another beautiful thing about Zakaria, is why mention Zakaria first, even though you would expect who to be mentioned first in Surah Maryam. You would expect Maryam to be mentioned first, but why is Zakaria mentioned? There's a beautiful reason behind that, because Zakaria alayhi salam, some people say he was 100 years old, some of the opinions, but let's just say above 70. Someone you would never think would have a child. And his wife, while they were young, could never bear a child. But now he still is in his above 70s. Some people said 100 years of age, but he did not give up on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because when he makes dua, he's not making dua based on his abilities, he's making dua based on Allah's abilities. And he knows the 3 things that the Prophet told us, that when you make dua, one of the 3 things is going to happen. Either you will get your response for the dua, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep the response for you in the hereafter, and that will be way more rewarding, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove a calamity from you. Right? So, so one of these 3 things are going to happen. So you can see that in Zakaria alayhi salam, when he's making dua, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use the word dua, by the way?
No.
What was the word used? Nida. Now the word nida, and this is where we get into that word by word analysis, and this is what we're going to do in the whole course, inshallah, where you really feel the juice of this surah. So nida, the scholars mention, is a call where you are screaming from top of your lungs and you don't really know if there's someone listening to you. You're so desperate, like you get into a car accident situation, you come out and you're just like, help, and you're not really looking at exactly who you're talking to, right? You're in just desperate situation, you're just screaming out, you have no idea if somebody's even going to hear your voice. Maybe you're rolled over in a ditch, you come out and you're just screaming, right? And you can't see nobody. That's what nida is versus dua, where you know exactly what you want and who you're talking to. So nida shows his desperation. And it also mentions that nida, he did it khafiya. So you might see a contradiction. Like he's saying it out loud, he's crying out loud, and he's desperate, but he's doing it khafiya. How can you make that?
Tahajjud?
Yeah, tahajjud or in private. So the default is always to make dua privately. But a lot of times Ramadan, what do? The 27th night, we're running for this masjid is doing a khatam of the Quran, and after that they're going to have a 1 hour long dua in public. So everyone's rushing towards that. But the default and the best dua is private. And the one with the most desperation, where you're crying out, nobody else knows, but Allah knows and He hears you. And that's the way Zakaria was crying. And that's why Allah didn't use the word dua, He used the word nida. Right? So just this one word and you get so much out of it. Right? Imagine if we studied the Quran in that manner. So, إِذْ نَادَى رَبُّهُ نِدَاءً خَفِيًّا. He did it in private, but he was pouring out his emotions, and he was not giving up on his dua, and he knew that Allah would respond to him, and he wasn't worried about his ability, he was focusing on Allah's ability, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He will take care of him. How is that connected to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? when this verse was revealed, was this in the later part of the Prophet or the early parts of his prophethood? Early, when he is at a point where all odds are against him. When Zakaria, all odds are against him. When the Prophet all odds against him. And Allah showing him, if Zakaria was helped, when you would never think he could have a son, you don't have to worry because I have your back. Right now things might seem really bleak and might seem like there's no end to this tunnel. But know that just like I took care of Zakaria, I will take care of you as well. See how beautifully everything connects in the Quran when you think about who is being revealed to and when it's being revealed. And then the surah continues a couple of more verses. Like if you look at verse number 9, he said, so it will be. Your Lord says, it is easy for me. Certainly I have created you before when you had been nothing. So this is verse number 9. Something that you've received from here is humility. Right? Whenever we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we shouldn't do it on our terms. Oh Allah, if you don't give me this, then I'm not doing this. Right? We should be making dua in Allah's terms. And Allah reminds us to be humble. Right? Sometimes we make dua like, oh Allah, I want to be patient, but I'll be patient about this thing, but I want it right now. Right? Like we contradict ourselves. I'll be patient about it, but I want it right now. So what this ayah showed, verse number 9, I'm just jumping, just giving you tidbits here and there, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one in control at the end of the day. And we were created out of nothing. Like just thinking about that, right? We were just a drop of fluid, and who put bones inside of us? How does water, liquid, turn to bones? Like who did that, right? If we can't even ponder about our own creation, forget about the sun and the moon and all the things around us. We see miracle day after day of the creation of God and how He proportioned us down to the fingertips. And that's exactly how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He will also resurrect us exactly down to the fingertips, because He knows every single person, how he was created. And not a leaf drops except that Allah knows about it. SubhanAllah. Verse number 21. He said, so it will be. Your Lord said that it's easy for me. And we wish to appoint him as a sign for mankind and a mercy from us, and it is a matter already decreed. This is the angel speaking to Maryam alayhi salam, telling her, you might think that this is not possible, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make anything happen. So don't, when you make dua to Allah, understand who you're asking and His abilities, and He will take care of us. And then finally, with the 2 minutes left, I wanted to point out your attention to Surah Maryam's verse 41 to 47. Any parent should go and look at this. And any child who's struggling with his parents should go and read this, and the patience and the da'wah techniques and the ability of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So he says, وَذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. Now I'm just going to go over these verses and you tell me what's common in these verses. So the father of Ibrahim alayhi salam is against Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then he says, Ibrahim tells his father, oh my father, why do you worship that which does not hear and that does not see, and it will not benefit you at all? So he says then, Ya abati, oh my dear father. إِذْ قَالَ لِأَبِيهِ Ya abati. The next verse, Ya abati inni qad ja'ani. Next verse, Ya abati la ta'budu shaytan. Next verse, Ya abati inni akhafu. What is this? What is something that's common here? Ya abati. Ya abati, right? So every verse. Now Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said something to his father comes back with the really harsh response. And then how does Ibrahim alayhi salam take it? He internalizes it and he does not take it personally. He responds back by saying Ya abati again, to say, oh my dear father. That's how he relates to his father. And then the father gets more harsh. How does he respond? Ya abati. Respect keeps increasing, the harshness keeps increasing, but he never gives up on his mannerism. He never gives up on his attitude, because Islam transcends beyond the basic manners. Our manners should be way above a regular person's manners. So he keeps on saying Ya abati, to the point where his father says that if you don't stop what you're doing, I will stone you to death. And even then Ibrahim is making dua, to the point where when his father dies, Ibrahim is crying and making dua, and Allah reminds him that after death there's no coming back, and you cannot make dua for someone who died on shirk and who did not believe in Allah. May Allah protect us from that. Ameen. So these were some highlights and gems. There was a lot more to be said. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to take back what we have heard. But you have a huge opportunity, brothers and sisters. Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda, who I think is already done Surah Maryam. He's going to go in so much depth. The flyers are here. Please at least take a flyer. Maybe somebody's life changes, they attend this course. It'll be a weekend course. I just went with one verse of word-by-word analysis. He's going to do that through the whole surah. Imagine your iman where it will be, but getting that much juice out of the Quran. So please take the flyer, inshallah, on your way out, and stay in touch with me. My number is on the flyers as well if you need to touch base with me for any other questions. We have every possible excuse or reasoning my people might not be able to take. We'll help you with it. Finances, rides, accommodation, whatever the case might be, we want people to benefit, inshallah. And I thank you for having me. Thank you, brother. Where are you guys? Adam and, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Okay, what does Islam say about going to a Christian's funeral?
Christian's funeral. Might have to defer this question, but, huh? La adri. I don't know, yeah. Because there might be, I know, like, for example, like if they are going to invoke Jesus, so I could maybe relate to it with our imam when we go for interfaith activities. Maybe I could relate to it somewhat there, where the whole problem is not the funeral, but it's the invocation on other than Allah, right? Like the Son of God and things like that. So we would actually tell the Christian congregation, we want to come and observe what you guys are doing, but please don't mind when you guys stand up to, because there's a part of the congregation when they actually call on to Jesus, and we notify them in advance that we're gonna keep sitting because we don't agree with that part. And they were totally respectful of that. So that's what we did in that situation. So I know it's tough because you might have a very valid reason and good friend, and this might look really rude, but we also want to clarify, and this could be a form of da'wah. They would appreciate it. Most of the time, they'll actually appreciate that. So, that's the best I could really tell you on that. So, Jazakallah for Brother Rehan and Brother Adam and all of you guys for having me. And sorry for the delay of coming here late.
Takbir. Takbir.
Jazakallah and Omar for coming. So